Hi, I'm Shapiro. I manage Liberty Bell Farms, and it's the home of Capstone Training. We have 14 horses here. We have 10 acres. I have had a waiting list in this barn for 9 years. And I think you come in, you see the horses are happy, they're well cared for, we don't have health issues, we don't have scratches, they get good turnout. I think when people come in, probably the hardest thing that they have a hard time with is in the winter, that they're not out on those beautiful pastures. But in order to maintain those beautiful pastures, we have to rest them. Our horses all have paddocks off of their stalls, and in the summertime, they are out on pasture basically from 9 o'clock in the morning till about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
You know, very rarely are we able to get away with winter-long grazing here in the Pacific Northwest. We get too much rain, we get too much compaction, we get too much overgrazing to allow animals to be out on the fields all winter long. And so what we recommend is a heavy use area where those animals are pretty much going to be confined from November to March, and you're going to be providing an alternative feed. Or if you have enough ground or other alternative places to turn them out, you can turn them out periodically through the day, but you're primarily going to be keeping them in that area, feeding them an alternative feed, and picking manure every day. Never graze lower than 3 inches tall, because the 3 inches and below is where all that plant retains its carbohydrates, and for the energy to grow, a plant grows by photosynthesis. It has to have enough leaf area to get up there with the sun. The sun comes down, provides the energy to the plant absorbs all the nutrients from the ground, continues to grow, the animal comes and clips it off. You never want to graze below that 3 inches. I always tell people, think of your pasture as your bank. If you think about that 3-inch level, anything above that 3 inches is your bank account. Anything below that 3 inches is your savings account. And so if you start chipping into grazing below the 3 inches, you're really starting to chip into your savings account. It's going to cost you fertilizer, it's going to cost you money, it's going to cost you extra feed. And then you start impacting to where you have weed issues and other things that can outcompete the grasses. If you just use your hand, a 3-inch tall pasture is going to be about here. So if you're managing your pasture and you stick your hand down in the pasture and the grass comes up to here, you're pretty well to be set at that 3-inch limit, and that's where you want to pull the animals off to that. Best combatant for weeds actually is keeping your grass as happy, as healthy as possible, getting your soil tests, adding your lime, adding your fertilizer needs, manage your grass heights 2-3 inches, and it may take for a number of years. Even if you want to go the herbicide route, you're going to have to do significant mowing during the year. But what you will find is if you increase your grass growth and the health and productivity of your grasses, you're going to be edging those weeds out. I don't think that there's anybody that really can get away without liming their fields, and you need to manage your pastures for the pH if you want to increase the productivity, manage the weeds, manage the species diversity and everything else. And so no matter where you are in Snohomish County or pretty much any county, that should be one of the first things that you look at is what is the pH of my soils and how do I remediate that. It's best to do a rotational grazing system if you want to prolong your forage, increase your forage value, and also maintain the health of your herd as well as the health of your pastures.
Within each one of our 6 sections of pasture, and each one of those sections of pasture is divided up. We have them divided into sections, and I rotate them generally every 2 to 3 weeks. As the summer goes on, it gets a little closer and closer because you don't want the grass to get eaten down so much.
Horses are very selective, and they're going to be choosing their same grasses all the time. They're going to be going back to their favorite places. And so what you want to do is confine them to smaller areas and rotate them around where they're less selective, they're forced to graze more uniformly, and they're going to be actually impacting your pasture lesser than on a large open scale. That's why in many places where you see an open field, you have a lot of short stuff, you have a lot of tall stuff, and you have a lot of uneven grazing because the horses are going back to their favorite stuff all the time and not forced to be less selective with their grazing. In the springtime, we're going to be starting out grazing when the grasses get 6 to 8 inches tall on the highest spot and graze through these areas until it's 3 inches tall.
I actually have portable fencing in there that I can make the pasture smaller, larger. In the winter, I actually take it down.
Rotational grazing fencing, what I love about this hot tape and the step-in post, this is very versatile until you really figure out what you really want to do with your pasture layout and how you want to have your paddocks developed, or maybe you have another horse come in and you need to split it again. This is very versatile for that.
When I'm resting my pasture after it has been grazed, I do mow it and then let it regrow before I put a horse back on it.
Every time you move a horse from the first rotational grazing paddock and the consecutive paddocks, is you will follow that horse behind with a lawnmower or a mower or a tractor mower or whatever you have. Because what that's going to do is you're going to notice that the horses, even in those smaller areas, are going to be very selective in their grazing, and you're going to have wolfy spots and big tall spots, short spots, and so you want to get everything back down to an even keel, everybody working at the same playing field to start growing back up again. Now, that will help with breaking up some of the manure in the field, but what you can also do in the fall is also harrow the pastures and drag them to break up the rest of the manure before you go into winter, so it breaks all those things up. You can harrow at any time, it doesn't matter. You can even harrow after you mow, but just the important thing is breaking those horse apples up and the manure piles up so you can get the sun down to it. It's going to help with the parasite cycle and everything else. One thing that's very important to remember is keeping your horses and your animals out of the waterways and the streams and the wetlands. The conservation districts all have programs that are great for fencing animals out of the waterways, providing off-stream water, because we don't want to increase the sediment and the bank stabilization. You know, we don't want to degrade that, and we want to really help protect the salmon and the salmon streams and all of that, and the benefit to water quality is also all of our responsibility. And so contact your conservation district on seeing how we can help.